Hello everyone, welcome to a new deck profile. I know it's been forever and I'm sorry about that, but I am here with a new deck profile, this time physical because I do play the deck in real life. This is going to be Blue Bleach from Volume 2. It's going to be the Ichigo Rukia Renji package. No Byakuya, sorry, it's just not a good card in my opinion, but don't worry about that. I'm going to give you guys a card by card of the full deck profile. Then I'll try my best to explain what the deck can do, the matchups, etc, etc. There's going to be very minimal editing, so please bear with me. I will try my best to not make it jank. But I'm going to start off with the zeros, one at a time, very simple. The Ichigos, these are the winner arts from the last championship tournament series for locals. They just have the standard draw ditch and their draw triggers. Next zeros, the Rukias. It's a get trigger. It's primarily just for early game and also to raid for the 4-drop Rukia. That's pretty much it. Next is Zangetsu. It's the first card so far with a unique effect. It says, when this card is placed from hand into sideline by an ability of a blue Ichigo on your field, the Ichigo that discards it gains. This card cannot be blocked by a character with 3,000 or less until end of turn. This is really good because what it pretty much does is it prevents your Ichigo from being blocked by a chump blocker, essentially, or a weenie, as I call them. It lets your bigger bodied Ichigos actually go through if your opponent has only small characters, or they have to block it with one of their bigger guys, especially if you're going for game that turn. A very solid card. Pretty much one of the best discard targets for another one of the Ichigos that I'll be showing in a moment. And overall, an amazing card, especially also being an active trigger. And speaking of active triggers on zeros, the last two will be the 0-drop Renji. It doesn't have a raid target, it's just a 0 because I think this deck having 14 zeros is really strong, especially when you consider the fact that the deck doesn't have any 1s, as you can see by Orihime right here. There's no 1s in this deck, so you're going to need to start deploying a bunch of zeros early on in order to actually build your back line. So 14 zeros, that's the basics so far. Now we're going to move on to the 2 drops in my deck. I'll put my little stack right here so everyone can see. We're going to start with 4 of the 2-drop Orihime. The 2-drop Orihime says, when she is placed from hand into sideline by an ability of a blue Ichigo on your field, choose an Ichigo on your field, and that Ichigo gains. This character cannot be chosen by your opponent's character or trigger abilities until the start of your next turn. Now, why is this so good? Because if you listened to how I worded the card, which is how it's written, the Ichigo that discards the Orihime does not have to be the one you give the ability to. So, for example, you can play this Ichigo, the draw ditch, discard Orihime, and then you can choose your raid Ichigo and then give that Ichigo the hexproof ability. And then you can use raid Ichigo's discard in order to gain his abilities of drawing and becoming 5k. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but this card is super important late game because it lasts until the start of your next turn. So even if you pass on your Ichigo, your opponent can't target it outside of Snipe, pretty much, which is its whole different can of worms. But you get to keep your Ichigo alive. Then if you can recur any draw ditch or Ichigos on your board, you can loo it again, and then again, and then again. 4, just for consistency's sake, and because she's a draw trigger, you really want to see this card in your mid and late game, just because of the fact that she can swing everything around. And if you were to pitch 2 Orihimes in one turn and target 2 of your Ichigos, like the 4-2 and the raid, they can't do anything. Even if you're in the mirror, they can't be bounced by the 4-2 Ichigo, they can't be frozen by Rukia raid. They're just 4k bodies, and it's... I can't explain how good this card is. I think this is a mandatory 4 of in any deck running Ichigo's engine, even though it's a very, very tight slotted deck. As you can see, or as you will see, I'm not playing the 2-drop Byakuya that gives energy because everything in this deck is 4 or less. I don't think there's any reason to run 2 gens outside of the color trigger for Orihime, and that's pretty much it. You don't really need it, in my opinion. As long as you get to 4, you're okay. Next is 2, there's a couple of 2-ofs here. The Renji 2-of, it's a 2 cost that says, on play, give a character with 2 or more base AP cost impact. The reason you play this is for the 3-2 Renji and the 4-2 Ichigo. Giving them impact is incredible, especially when you consider the fact that nothing in this deck has impact. And if you were to combo the 4-2 Ichigo and discard the Getsuga Jushiro, which I will show later, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but that gives Ichigo double attack. So, at least with Renji, you have a 4k double attacker with impact, and if they have 2 life and no impact negate, then that's it, you know? Especially if you were to use the effect of the Orihime, which I just mentioned, and give that Ichigo hexproof until start of your next turn. Super solid. You don't need more than 2. I'll explain why I have so many 2-ofs in this deck soon. And speaking of 2-ofs, my last 2-ofs, at least for my 2 costs, is the 2-1 Ichigo. Activate main, discard a card from your hand. Once per turn, this character gains cannot be blocked by a character with 4,000 or more. Which means if your opponent has all 4Ks, which in the late game that can tend to happen, he will just swing, and they can't do anything about it. And actives will not do anything either. It's guaranteed damage. You can combo with Getsuga Jushiro. The important thing, too, to know about this Ichigo saying can't be blocked by 4K or more is you can combo it with Zangetsu. If you pitch Zangetsu with this Ichigo's ability, your opponent cannot block with anything 3,000 or less or 4,000 or more. So they can only block with 3,500, which is a very scuffed stat line that only a handful of cards in this game have. And they likely won't have it anyways. And it's really obnoxious. And I think it's really strong. Outside of that, again, you can activate its abilities and pitch Orihime, buff the rest of your card, or rest of the Ichigos, rather. And overall, the 2 cost package is just super strong because they're all beneficial in some form. And that's the 2s. Now we'll go to the 3s. And we'll start with the color trigger of this deck. The Orihime, which is an insane card in my opinion. She says, on play, you may return a character on your field with 2 or less energy to your hand. And if you do, you can add a card, not a character, with 2 or less energy from sideline to hand. So this is the answer to why I play a bunch of 2-ofs in my 2 cost section. Because she can loop them. She can salvage them. She can salvage Orihime to discard for Ichigo. She can grab the Renji so you can play the Renji to give your 2 action point cards impact. She can grab anything 2 and below, which is just unbelievable. And this card, you want to see this super early and just hold on to it for dear life. I mean, there's nothing bad I can say about Orihime. She does everything in this deck. You just have to be careful about playing her too early and not really getting any benefits off of it. She is a 2-gen that can help you get to 4 or higher and let you move stuff up from the back line, or she will help you win the game by grabbing the Renjis, or by grabbing Orihime, or by grabbing any of the Zangetsu cards except for the special trigger. Just amazing. Seriously, like, one of the best cards in this entire set, let alone this color. Because she's so insanely versatile. And the fact that she's a 3-1, and you have to bounce something on your own board, that's why there's no problem if you are starved for energy. You can play Zangetsu from hand. Play this, bounce Zangetsu back to your hand, so that way he's back in your hand for discard, so you can use Ichigo's abilities. That's not even to say, like, you can bounce anything that's here, because it needs 2 or less. So don't ever feel like, oh crap, you know, I don't want to play these cards because they have to be discarded. She will fix your issue. Hell, you can play Renji, play Orihime, play Renji, and then you just give your Ichigo Impact 2, just as an example of what you can do. Or you can give the Renji and the Ichigo Impact. Yeah, it'll be your whole turn for 3 action points, but it's doable, and it's very strong. The other card is the first 2 cost in the deck, and 1 of 2. It is the Renji. I'm so sorry that the text is very blurry, because camera is very blurry, but I'll do my best to explain. He has Nullify Impact, 4K base. He says, on play, you may discard a card from your hand, and if you do, make an action point active. So you can pitch a card from hand for cost, and gain an action point back. So he becomes a 3-1 at the cost of you discarding a card. Not an issue. It won't trigger any of your discard abilities, but, you know, if you're in the late game and all you have is a bunch of zeros, there's no problem with it. Second ability is Activate Main. If there's another character on your field with 2 or more base AP cost, he becomes active. So, I'll explain the combo shortly. Actually, you know what? I can explain the combo right now. Let me grab the 4-2 Ichigo. So the 4-2 Ichigo right here says, on play, you can bounce a 4,000 or less from your opponent's front line to their hand. Very annoying, very good. And Activate Main, draw a card, then discard a card. So drawing first of all, amazing. So you don't have to neg yourself first. You can look at a card in your hand. If it's bad, you trash it immediately. You can pitch Orihime's, you can pitch Zangetsu's. It's extremely versatile. So ideally, what you want to do is you play Renji first. He comes in tapped. You discard for an action point back. Play the Ichigo, bounce something on their board, then use Renji's Activate Main, restand himself because the Ichigo's on the board now. And now when you pass turn, you have 2 4K bodies, and one of them swings, and he has Nullify Impact. So again, very annoying card, extremely good. These are 4-ofs. Let me move Orihime here, talking about... Actually, we'll just move all the 3 stacks here. The Ichigo is cracked. Bouncing 4Ks is really obnoxious. Also really good in certain matchups. For example, with Black Clover, if they're putting a bunch of books underneath their Dante or their Asta, you can at least go Ichigo, bounce them, and they lose all the books and they all go to sideline. The only downside is obviously you're putting the raid back into their hand so they can re-raid. But, you know, if they overcommit on a turn and they play a 2 AP card, you can bounce that as long as it's 4,000. But that's not all. Let's talk really quickly about the Raid Ichigo. Raid Ichigo says, on play, you can choose 2 characters on your opponent's front line with 2,000 or more, and they lose 1,500. So what does this mean? It means 5Ks can become 35, and you can play this, and you can bounce 5Ks. There's not really a time when you want to do that outside of pushing for game, because giving, let's say, like Lancelot back to them, or Kurapika Raid back to them, is really bad, because they'll clearly like just kill your stuff on the crackback, which you don't want to do. But if you bounce their 5Ks, which will then become 35s, you're in a good position. And I know the argument is, well, you know, you could just swing at them and then they have to block with 3,500. But I mean, this is all subjective. It's all based on game state. Anything can really happen for the most part. I'm not doing an amazing job because, like I said, no script, just talking about my general play with these decks. It's really good, especially like in certain matchups, like if you're fighting yellow One Punch Man. If you see that, you know, their board has a lot of the opposite character, so like if you're playing against the sisters and their whole board is blizzards, you just bounce Tornado back to their hand, and then it's like, well, sometimes they don't have it. And if they do have it, you know, who really cares at that point? This deck is super aggressive. And also this Ichigo is an active trigger, I didn't mention that. But the main crux of the Raid Ichigo is the Activate Main once per turn. You place a Zangetsu or Getsuga card from your hand into the sideline. If you do, you get to draw a card. And then you get to do, when attacking, draw a card and give him 1,000. So Ichigo becomes a 5K. That draws you on swing. Now, why is this so good? I'm glad you asked. I'm just gonna cut a little ahead here. I'm all over the place. The Getsuga Jushio is, at first it reads like because it says, you know, choose a character with 3,500 or less BP and then sideline it. Really, what that means is if you raid Ichigo, you can pop a 5K. Other than that, but you're not really using it for the first line of text. It's primarily for the second right here, which says, when this card's placed from hand into sideline by an ability of a blue Ichigo on your field, place a card from your hand to the bottom of your deck, then give that Ichigo double attack. So this becomes 5k double attack, draw a card. So swing, draw, swing, draw. Plus, if you play the 0-drop Ichigo or any of these other Ichigos on your board, you can activate them, pitch Orihime. This now becomes 5k draw, and you can't target it with anything. So even if they hit a special, you can't stop him. It is very obnoxious. It is a very strong way to close games. If you have 2 of these in your hand, and you have 2 of these, and you have 2 Orihimes, dude, it's bad. Especially because these are all once per turn draw ditches. I mean, it gets very scary very fast how many swings you can do and how many your opponent just can't deal with. I'm going to save Rukia for last with my deck profile, but 4 Bankais, you know, they're the AP cards. Nothing to really say. 2, his name is Zangetsu. It says on play, or on activate, I should say. Draw 2 cards, but if you discard it with an Ichigo's ability, it's draw 1 card. Amazing discard fodder. You can recur it with Orihime because it's a 2-cost card, which is crazy. I don't think you need more than 2. I see some decks running 3 and some running 4. It can get very bricky in the late game, and then you don't want to overdraw. Because when playing this deck, if you're not careful, you can very quickly get to 9 cards in hand or higher, and then at that point, it's just bad. Bankai, primarily what you want to do is save these for your 2 AP turns. So, you know, playing Ichigo or playing Renji, and then you want to just fill your whole front row, you can do that. Like if you want to go, if you have Ichigo in the front, you can Bankai after playing a Renji. Then you can pretty much, actually, let me think here. Yeah, if you do Renji's ability and then you Bankai, you go back to 3. Because it goes down to 2, you pay 1 for 2 back, and then this ability. Then you can play another Renji, and he will stand himself again. Or you can play Ichigo, or you can play any of the raids. The crazy thing about this Renji is that the once per turn to stand him is not a hard once. It's every copy of this card can do it, which is stellar. Last, the raid Rukia. Only 2 because the truth is, every time I see this card and I try to make it work, when I freeze their board or their character, she just dies next turn every single time, and it feels so bad. So she says on raid, if on the front line, choose a character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. If it is your turn and you have a 2-action card on your field in the front line, that character stays frozen until the Rukia dies. Then at the end of their turn, it stands. So think about it a lot like the cube from JJK from the yellow Gojo deck. It's the same thing, but on a 4K body. It sounds amazing, and it is amazing. It's very reminiscent of Hitsugaya in green. But the biggest problem is the fact that, like I said, she has no protection. You can do it and then swing, and then they hit a special and she's dead, and it's like nothing happened. I guess you saved an attack. I tried running her at 4. She feels really good in certain matchups. Like, I think this card single-handedly stomps Green One Punch Man, the Saitama build, because freezing Kings really, really hurts them if they don't have King's Engine or King's Game. I don't know what that card is fully called, truthfully. Or if they don't have a way to raid King and Popper. This card single-handedly can win you that match. However, in certain matchups, like Green Hunter Hunter with Kurapika or Green SAO, any snipe deck, Red Black Clover that on raid just kills her. Too many cards in the current meta just pop her and she instantly dies, and then you're back to square one. And with this deck only having 4 raid targets, which is the 0 Rukias, you don't want to go too heavy on it. I think the Ichigo package is better. I do think that she's good enough to warrant keeping in the deck as a tech option. I was debating on putting Hakuno Togame, which is her special triggered, which pops a 5k, over the Getsugas, but Orihime just makes this package so much stronger that there's like, you're just hurting yourself, especially when you factor in that you can't really salvage these at all or even search them or anything with them. But that's the deck profile. A little sloppy, a little scatterbrained, so I apologize for that. I will be posting my X-Burst deck list in the, am I pointing down? There we go. In the description, so you can see it. You can also do some sample hands there yourself to see how the deck works. If you wanted to see how it looked with everything, because some people like to see the full display of cards, I will happily do that for you right now. Do I think this deck is strong? Yes. Do I think the deck is tier 1? Also yes. Am I biased? Absolutely. Is this the best deck in Bleach? I would say yes. I would say this is better than green Bleach, and I would say this is better than purple Bleach. I think purple Bleach is incredibly strong. Look out for me doing that soon. I have the deck like 99% finished. I think Senjumaru is amazing, but I think blue Bleach's control is just a little bit stronger in the current matchup spread. And as a result, I would play this just because I think it's better. Which maybe that's wrong to say. I think they're both strong. If you held me at gunpoint and said, hey, choose, I would think that I think blue Bleach is 100% tier 1. There's no universe where it's not. I would say purple Bleach at worst is 1.5. There's an argument for 1.0. And you're free to say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. If you disagree, write a comment. Tell me I'm a moron. I love the engagement. I love going back and forth. Here's my beautiful spread of the deck. Again, I'm sorry it's crappy quality, but, you know, again, I'll have a link. You can see everything. This is the deck. Do I think it's strong? Yeah, incredibly. I think this deck doesn't have any super bad matchups at the moment. Sometimes, if a deck is really aggro, like certain red decks, you can kind of get pushed back before you can start getting your game plan going because, you know, once you go to 3, you want to play Renji and get that ball rolling. If they remove him immediately, it feels really bad. But if they don't remove him, I mean, hell, he's really strong. The big question a lot of people ask is, hey, which of these two do I play first? Do I play the Renji first or the Ichigo first? And I understand some people want to play the Renji first because of the fact that, like, hey, you know, it's a 4K body with impact negate. Or nullify impact. Sorry, I keep thinking of the JP terms. But honestly, it can go either way. You don't need to stand the Renji for the swing that badly in the early game. You kind of just want to set one up for board presence and to get an action point so you can play another body at least in your front line. I mean, the Renjis for the 0 cost are also good bodies in the front because of the fact they have 2K baseline. So a lot of zeros are 1500, especially the ones that are just the vanillas for raid targets or the ones that say draw ditch. So at least with him being in the front, he can't be contested until they start playing the 3K base bodies in the mid and late game. Your front line, 99% of the time, will be everything back here will be in the front. The Ichigos will be your main swingers. Make sure to do Orihime, especially if you feel like the game's been going on for a while. You know, they haven't used any specials or they've been holding on to them. You got to make sure to protect your boys because otherwise you're in huge trouble. This is the deck profile. It's been a lot. I'll put timestamps so that way people can jump around and skip over to whatever they want to see. But overall, thanks for joining this scuff. I will try to upload more regularly. I apologize for this huge delay in content. I will do Purple Bleach next, and then I will see if I want to do some Shadowverse Worlds Beyond when that comes out in a few days. I think 2 days when this video goes live. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for stopping by. Like, no outro, no intro. We're just doing it raw, baby.